Good morning, it's Billy Turriff here. I'm a full-time property investor and developer and founder of Kensington Finance. This is one of a series of podcast videos I'm doing with a number of individuals I've had the pleasure of working with in the last couple of years. And today I've got Stuart Scott with me.
Morning,
Stuart. Hi. Stuart's an award-winning property developer, an investor, and successful experience behind him in other businesses. I first met Stuart probably about 4 years ago, I think now. And when I met Stuart, it was part of the kind of mastermind community, and he was one of the top 5 performers. But what really stood out to me was some of the design work that he did, and anyone who's kind of in the same kind of fields as we are, it's kind of 2 individuals that really stand out for design. One of them's Stuart to me, and one of them's Julian Morris. And I'm really glad to have him here. He's been doing some quite exciting things and really just kind of wanted to delve deeper into them, give you kind of some insights to the approach Stuart's taken to investing, and maybe look at some alternatives and see whether they're right for you or not. So maybe I gave a brief introduction there, but do you want to maybe even give a briefer introduction and see if you can give us your life story in 60 seconds?
So as you mentioned, I come from a design background, which meant that I went through the art college and the design college and advertising, marketing, the BA in those areas of marketing. And I went through that traditional route, and then I ended up in advertising agencies, branding agencies, full service agencies, creative agencies, which covered everything from product to digital to physical, everything in between. And in those companies, I was kind of the strategic guy, the ideas guy, and the creative director. And that work, I enjoyed my job. I loved what I did. And the only and I kind of took it back as far as I could, and I had an opportunity to start my own business. And I started my own creative agency.
And did you start that yourself, or was there other founders?
No, I was a co-director. So basically, what happened is, I was very well respected in what I was doing in my field for creative direction, and a friend of mine who I met along the way was one of the smartest people I'd met in technology, technology systems. We came together and we said, I think we can do something amazing here. We can take user-centered design, user experience, and user research, and we can start to blend it with this new world of digital that was starting to emerge. And so what we did is we kind of came together and we created this company that was going to create these kind of like amazing physical digital experiences for brands, which is what we did. And our niche for that company was that we were a highly creative kind of experimental company, and we only worked on interesting projects that we were doing. And our mantra, testament to my co-director's foresight on it, was we kept a lot of cash reserves in that company. It meant that we could turn one down, that we didn't think we were going to enjoy. So then what happened is we did loads of creative work, and that led to more creative work. So we got a niche as a highly creative agency.
What year was that in?
Well, I've been full-time in property for about 4 or 5 years, I think it is. And prior to that, I probably had about 3 years of growing Storage Stream, which is my second company, which is a product company. And then prior to that, it was about another 7 years. So it was that.
So it was really at the start of social media.
It was only infancy of I guess SEO and social media and search. It was just at the point where physical marketing and agencies were having to grapple with going digital. It just so happened that while I was going through those early agencies, I was always the guy that knew about the digital. So I was the creative director that could talk about that part of it. So it was just a really exciting time to where almost design changed. It wasn't if you're really talented at being able to create something that looks good, that's reasonably easy. Actually doing something that works well, that is the usability. So what we found is this kind of field many years ago was called user experience, and it was about user-centered design. So companies would pay a lot of money to do user research, data studies, to look for the insights, and then design some kind of experience based on what we found out. So you can see how that's transitioned through. So I came from that world where everything was very much a bit like the startup world. It was all about product, it was all about startup, it was about innovation, and it was about trying new things, and it was about experimenting and researching.
Yeah. Who were your kind of clients that you would work with? And
Oh, we had a whole broad sense. It would range from Porsche to Adidas to Nike to
Okay.
to Tom Dixon in
Yep.
the UK, Penguin Random House. Well, actually, our main contract was Random House.
Yeah.
Then got merged with Penguin.
And then, so did you sell that business, or did you roll onto the setting business? What happened?
I
with
sold that business.
Okay.
It was acquired.
Yeah.
So we in the latter years we started incubating tech startups, and we built the innovation teams for them. And then one of them got lots of traction, and it needed to go to the next level very quickly. It basically got an offer to buy us. Me and my co-director said, "Well, that doesn't happen every day.
Yeah.
Life's short. Let's take it." So we did that, and then we kind of worked in earn-out period. And
Okay.
that company's called StoryStream. That's now being built to sell. I've retained all my shares, and then hopefully, fingers crossed, the next 2 years that will be sold.
And how did you feel when you got the offer?
I think we were 7 years into an agency. It's not, we didn't really do great work, but it's tough. It's tough running a business, and I think we reached that point where we would have either kind of worked through it and grown to the next level. We had about 20 staff.
Yeah.
We would have gone to the next level, or we would have kind of taken a step back and kind of slowed down a little bit. So I think it just came at the right time.
Well, were you quite pleased, or was there kind of a feeling of sadness as well that the baby was being passed on?
Initially, we were very pleased because we were
Yeah.
thinking, as a lot of agencies, it's easier for a product to sell.
Yeah.
It's harder for an agency
Yeah.
to sell. So I think initially we were very excited about it, and when I kind of look back on it many years later, I think that we could have grown and grown and grown that, and we were highly niche.
Yeah.
But the reality is, I think we were both in that position where we kind of felt that is this our life? Is this what we do forever now?
Have you come across Steve Bartlett from Social Chain at all?
No.
The guy, so he's definitely come up. So he's got a podcast called The Diary of a CEO. So he's 27, based between Manchester and New York, but he floated. He's the biggest agency now in the UK in digital, and he floated it for 300 million this year as a 27-year-old. So it's quite phenomenal. But when he sold his first business, he said it was a really surreal feeling because he kind of went home, looked on Rightmove, picked the ideal house he wanted, went on Auto Trailer, found out whatever car he wanted, and then he said he just felt completely depressed because he thought it was just there's this financial rewards, but then it's like, what the hell have I been doing, and kind of what am I going to do going forward?
So there is a downside that comes out of it that no one ever talks about. So, and I do openly talk about it now, which is that if you're in a situation where you sell a company and you work on an earn-out period, do not make that earn-out period more than 1 year.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, you're going to sell it. It's not your baby anymore. The company you're now in is someone else's baby.
Yeah.
And ultimately,
There's got to be some clashes there.
well, you've suddenly got more chefs in the mix. It's within 1 year. There's no point doing an earn-out beyond 1 year. I think I was probably done by 1 year. I think. And my heart wasn't in it beyond 1 year, and that was the point. I was always saying, look, you effectively your only role is to transition the clients, to transition the staff, and to manage yourself out.
Yeah.
You don't need 3 years to do that.
Absolutely.
1 year is fine.
And how long did you do? Did you do?
I
3
did
years?
about 2 to 2.5, and then I came to an agreement with my co-directors and say that I want to move over into property. They supported me doing it, so I kind of managed the transition, if you like.
Good. And then what appealed to you about property? Because a lot of the stuff you kind of talked about, the kind of creative kind of business and ad agency, then to me it's very quick and it's on the ball, and things can kind of, when it comes out on Twitter or whatever campaign, and whether you go kind of from political stuff like what happened with the Arab Spring a couple of years ago, and kind of overnight Facebook had theoretically taken or impacted the taking down of governments, to kind of new products and stuff coming out now. It's very fast, can be, I think, quite difficult to see. Whereas I think property, to me, is very long term and is probably, in my view, out of all industries, one of the least tech savvy. You think of how we buy a property. Lawyers are it's one of the few things we need to use lawyers. You can't actually do it yourself, but I've never met anyone that can. And lawyers are probably one of the few people that sometimes will still shut the office at lunchtime. So even just from kind of the buying to then actually, doing, whilst there's been a lot of stuff around 3D printer, modular, and buildings definitely getting more advanced, but it takes a lot of time compared to what I'd call more product advertising
Yeah.
stuff that's real life.
I mean, I just saw that as an opportunity. You know, that, as you say, the creative agency is creative market is very fast moving, very innovation driven. And I guess I saw a massive opportunity. I looked at the market, I did my market analysis, market research, and I just saw a huge gap in the market. It was glaring, huge gap in the market. The HMO industry hadn't, very early on, so in the years of growing my companies, I was flipping properties on the side.
Okay.
So me and my wife were serial renovators.
Okay.
I thought I was going to end up in the self-build. I thought that what would happen is me and my wife would do flips every year. I was doing that, I was making good money from doing that. And I thought what would happen is we'd build our own house, we'd end up doing the classic self-build thing.
But that obviously gave you the insights just to the speed of stuff, even especially when you're flipping. When we've sold development, again, even you've got 4 deals done, everything's fine, you're halfway through legals, something happens down the chain, split up with a partner, they kind of no longer buy, and you're just 6 weeks.
I wasn't doing it professionally. I was doing it on the side. As I was taking my director's dividends, at the end of the year, we perform a whole year, and however we performed, we would take a chunk back as directors. So every time I had that chunk, I reinvested it into property. So I already knew property stacked as a thing, but I didn't truly believe that just flipping property was enough to sustain.
But you did them all as flips at that time. You didn't keep any.
I didn't keep any, no.
Did you wish you had kept some now?
Yeah, some of them. I wish I had. But I mean, at the time, I wasn't thinking that far ahead. I was just enjoying the process. It was an interest, and it was more of a side passion that I was doing. And of course, when the opportunity arose to go into it full time, I thought, well, actually, I need to really think about the strategy I use here. Did my research and realised, look, I need to replace my income. Number one, I need to replace my income. Flipping will do that, but it's too piecemeal. So I was like, okay, I need to look at different strategies that do that. I need to do high cash flowing. I looked at all of them. Looked at the HMO market. Looked at my area in the southeast. Saw that there was a big gap there. I thought this product was substandard for what the customer wanted. I could see there was a bit of change going because there was some stuff happening in America. Collective hadn't really launched in the UK, but I could see it was about to happen. I was quite shocked what I saw, really. I mean, certainly in Brighton over the southeast, I felt that for a long time my own employees were telling me they were struggling to find anything. Struggling to find anywhere to live, let alone it being inspiring.
Okay. And what year was that? That was about 4 years ago, was it?
Oh, that would be going back. It's probably 7 to 10 territory.
Okay, so it's still what I'd call the kind of the old school HMO landlords.
Mainly a lot of student housing. Brighton is mainly a student landlord area. But it's the quality isn't there. A lot of the landlords we bought many years ago don't want to change it. There's no impetus to. Very closed market, very competitive, so very difficult to get into it. Perfect storm for applying some innovation into it.
So then what did you want to do from an innovation perspective?
Well, all I really wanted to do was firstly I wanted to replace my income and have a viable business that would sustain in the southeast. That was priority number one. Priority number two was how could I apply everything that we've been doing over our kind of our professional career into that market to create a win-win. So not only were you creating at the time I believed that what I could do is I could create a product that was more advanced than anything that's on the market. I could use techniques that would allow me to basically just stay one step ahead of everyone in the market. I would get the highest rents on the market, which was hypothetical at the time. I didn't know I could achieve it. I thought it could affect the GDVs because I had already been using those principles on flipping to get higher rent, higher sale prices. So I kind of put the two and two together and thought, well, if we create a really great product, we can create a really great customer experience. And I think one of the things that learns from the product world is that everyone's focusing on just the tenant and tenant being a problem, rather than why don't we just get a customer for life, or not so much for life, for the duration of their life that they are before they move into a 1-bed flat or a 2-bed flat. There is no other brand they want to work with apart from you. And they're happily pay more because of the experience they're going to get.
So I must admit that's one of the things I've always found as a bit of a challenge in property. So if I think of Apple and an iPhone, you can have a customer for life. That doesn't matter. Whereas in property, I typically see the journey that people will go into maybe student accommodation, maybe then a professional house share, then a one bedroom, then a terraced house, then your kind of first family home, then the detached family home. So it's not like a standardised product that people actually change. So one of the debates I've had with a lot of people is when they actually spend a lot of time on branding, positioning something, it's like, well, that customer's actually only going to buy from you once. So is it?
Well, in many cases, yes. But what we've seen, for example, is we've had customers that will stay in one of our properties, and then what they'll do is they'll recommend their friends. Then you're in net promoter score territory. You're actively recommending their friends. And then their friends start to live there, and then they want to move around. So we have people, for example, that say, actually, have you got anything with co-working space? And we'll say, well, as soon as one comes up, you've got first refusal going in. So we kind of almost, although we're taking a standard rent, we're treating it like a membership model. So people can move based on the facilities and services. The only reason people then move out will be, it could be they've met someone and they want to settle down and get a one bed. Fair enough.
Is all your rooms single occupancy? Do you allow couples?
We have got a few couples, but not a lot. We do also have a number of apartments. But they tend to go very quickly. But people, it's room size. Someone might buy a 10 square metre room, and they might just outgrow it. And then you can say, well, actually, we have got a whole load of 15 square metre rooms coming out, but the price is another £100 per if you wanted it. So we find that actually there is a life cycle within the life cycle. So within the kind of co-living HMO world, there is a life cycle of people migrating to the area, divorcees, people who don't want to live on their own, don't want to be lonely. They start with something small, want something bigger, want something actually, have you got something with a garden, because this one's in a maisonette. So there is...
So tell me a bit about, when you say co-living, what is co-living from your perspective and what you ultimately provide to your customers?
So the evolution of the HMO into co-living is an evolution of product. So the product that the customer has been having for how many years as the HMO has gradually evolved into a more customer-centric product. So co-living is an Americanized term, came out of America, out of the back of co-working. HMO is a technical term that no one searches for. I mean, it's just a pointless name to call the actual product HMO is. Customers not even searching for that. So co-living was really representative of the fact that the product is just about to go through an evolution change. It's a bit like the impact that the touch screen had to the mobile phone market is the impact that the co-living jump, if you like, had to the HMO market. So really, co-living isn't just the social space. It is a reflection of, for example, the services, the facilities, and everything else that's wrapped into it. It's a focus on a community-based lifestyle. Some landlords would interpret that as just creating a better social space, which is a start, and that's brilliant. So you've got your cinema rooms and your games rooms, and you've got these large open plan social spaces with co-working and everything else. And that's true. That is a huge part of it. But the bit that gets missed is, or certainly something that we see, is community is created. So you can facilitate a community. That's creating a space. Building a community, you need to do the operations. So if you do the operations, which is what we did, we've built our own kind of operations team or in-house agency, if you like. We can have community managers. We can put on community events. We can nurture those communities, we can help people interlink and move between this kind of almost a cluster of various communities and move around within there in a kind of membership style model. You can't do that if you don't manage the property, which is effectively, so imagine, for example, customer journey is one big circle. If you were just creating the product and then it hands over to the managing agent, you're really hoping they're doing a good job, because they're the ones actually providing the customer experience. When we started into this field, I didn't believe that it was possible to create an amazing customer experience unless you controlled the customer experience.
Can I ask you though, do you think that is actually a niche, or do you think it's going to go to mass market? And the reason I ask that, I remember, and I'm talking, maybe before I went to Dubai, it's probably about 10, 12 years ago, I was at a conference and it was a Scandinavian guy who was talking. And one of the things he talked about was the breakdown of the modern community, and don't ask me why, I think Scandinavia's got more single people than anywhere else, and they actually go 10-pin bowling by themselves. And when I think of like the community, so when I was a kid growing up, you know, we had one house, but we had 4 neighbours. We all just used to run about into each other's houses. I bought a house now, I don't know, probably 6-7 months ago. I know 2 of the neighbours on the street. There's certainly, from a community perspective, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but to me, if anything, we've moved away from a community towards more singletons. So and always in life, to me, there's opposites. So there's kind of no right or wrong, you know, and what will appeal to someone will appeal to someone else. But what I'm quite interested in is, do you think co-living, the way you've described it, with the community, is that actually for a niche that some people will actually love and like, but actually it's not for the mass market? Or do you actually think that that's what the mass market wants?
I think it's area specific.
Yeah.
But certainly in the southeast, where it's expensive to get a 1-bed flat and a 2-bed flat, it is it's a financial price point, it's a necessity thing. Well, you know, one thing I'd say about shared living is that, you know, I lived in HMOs when I was growing up, probably unofficial one. I don't know if they were licensed. Yeah. But I'm still friends with all of the people I lived with in the HMOs. They're still friends. I still meet up with them for a couple of lunches and stuff. So that's lifelong friendships that I've gained from being there. So I think if you're in an urban area, the right kind of urban area, shared living provides a social circle and a support network. If either you haven't got one or you want to expand one. So I think there's a lot of positives that can come out of it in the right area.
No, I agree. And then also, I mean, I also differentiate because, you know, the reality was as an expat, and then certainly this market's going to grow hugely in the UK. You lived on a compound, so you had your own apartment, so you had the complete privacy, but you were looking out to the beach. You had the swimming pool in there because of cost. You had a whole lot of shops, but you could just phone the shops and they would actually deliver to your door.
Yeah.
But you could then come home from work. You didn't have to even go up to your apartment. You know, you could just leave your stuff at the desk. You could just walk to the bar and you would know someone there. And for me, from a community perspective, that was great. That was ideal. I mean, partly some of its age. Again, when I was a student, actually sharing houses and doing that's great. But if I think of most of my HMOs just now, most of the professionals, certainly not that they don't want to be there, but if you said to them, do you want to stay in this HMO or do you want to stay in an apartment? And the answer is they would rather stay in an apartment than in an HMO. And like some of these big build to rent schemes that's happening in the city centres, they're certainly providing very good services. They're also do have the kind of community managers and more just events. So I suppose it's kind of easier just to dive in and out if you get me.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the future it's going to be about hybridisation.
Yeah.
Hybridisation of the two, mixed schemes that have a blending of private and shared. I mean, we get a lot of people that view our co-living projects or rooms that they want to move into, and you know they've been in a 1-bed flat, and they have they've said that they don't speak to anyone during the week. They have the friends at work, and then they come home. And they're usually spending too much money and having no money left. Because they're obviously not sharing. It's not like 2 friends getting a 2-bed flat. You know, someone in a 1-bed flat or a studio, and they just want to be a bit more social. It's surprising how many people have actively said, "Look, I'm a bit lonely and I want to."
Well, it's quite interesting. I know the over 55 market actually quite well, and obviously developed in it, but also, you know, my dad lives in an over 55 kind of whatever small co-living to some extent. But there's also Cartney and Stone have actually created about 3-4 right next to them. They have deliberately actually kept certain parts. So my dad's is actually only 20 apartments, but there's basically like 2 rooms that's kept. It's quite funny. Each week they actually all meet and they have fish and chips together. And in Scotland, because they all own the freehold, they've got their own kind of management company. But again, some of the larger ones that McCartney and Stone have done as well. You know, there's kind of flats that people can stay in, but there is actually kind of like a community hall for the residents. And I know that in America it's been for ages. They go to the extent when you've got kind of the grey universities and all that stuff. I think it'll, and I also do actually think. I think it's one of the problems. I think going into singleton isn't how we're meant to be. You know, if you go back to basic, we're meant to be tribes, and you are meant to live in communities. I think we should, you know, to some of the extent, I'm not saying it's the whole cause of mental illness, but I think being part of a community is better for you than kind of being by yourself. So from a kind of well-being perspective, I think it's definitely good. I think a lot of people and companies at different things. You know, I think you're really talking about what I'd call the kind of the young professional market.
Yeah, it is. We're very niched into that, that one area.
But to me, there's a huge opportunity for over 55s as well, because you know, a lot of the time their families will get smaller, they maybe lost a partner, etc. So for them, you know, and it's more difficult for them to go out and meet people. They may not be working. You know, I expect it'll kind of explode there. So what would, just tell me a bit about your kind of your customer when you say niche. So it's young.
It's young professionals. Although just tying on to what you just said there about the older generation, we do have a lot of people that now you would traditionally assume co-living would be 25, 35.
Yeah.
Kind of classic millennials, extended side. But what we've actually found is that we get a lot of applications from people that are in their 40s. The oldest person we've got is actually 51 or something. And so what we've done is we've experimented with doing kind of intergenerational co-living. Yeah. And that's worked quite well. Yeah. That's worked quite well. You know, because they socialise together, and you know, you've got to get the right kind of balance of people in the house. But you know, they'll all cook together. You know, that's, you know, because if you design the space in the right kind of way, you have to have enough room that they can all basically dine and eat together. And that, even if you need to put in a few stools and you know that space could be moved or modified, that's still fine. But they might decide to hold an event and all want to, you know, cook together.
So it's quite interesting. Again, so my HMOs, so I've got student houses, I've got professional houses, and in my student houses, it's completely about the communal area. You know, it's typically about actually playing on their Xbox and drinking and whatever else. But they're, you know, whenever you go into the house, you know, 90% of people are sitting in the communal area and they're chatting away, and they, to some extent, they come as a group to the house anyway. So it's a little bit different. I accept. Whereas in my professional houses, you spend a lot of time doing what I call funky design to the co-living spaces, and they're simply not used at all. And one of the things I'm kind of quite interested is sort of the different tenant types, it's student versus professional. But I also kind of worry that is the professionals you get in the southeast compared to the professionals you get in the northwest. So typically, that kind of young professional you said there, I think 95% of the time in the northwest will be able to afford a one-bedroom apartment or sharing with a two-bedroom apartment. Whereas the kind of houses of multiple occupation are typically maybe more for kind of the grey collar kind of community, or people just coming to the area, and a lot of you know, European workers, but you know, like working, we've got stuff close to the Trafford Centre, so a lot of kind of shop workers, etc. But a lot of their focus is really around getting cash, sending it back. They all get on, but they're certainly not the community feel in my professional ones as there is with the student ones. And the student ones, interestingly, you don't have to do anything. They just gel, and sometimes their community can be bad. If there's too much noise, if there's complaints from neighbours. But you know, without a doubt, if I walk around 10 student houses, you know, 8 of the living rooms will have the students sitting in it, just integrating.
Yeah, I mean, so what we did quite early on is we did some, we looked at how people were using the spaces, we did some early kind of surveys, if you like, to understand what people wanted. What we identified very early on was that the social spaces for HMOs and co-living were really more about facilitating breakfast, lunch and dinner.
Okay.
Now, there's a tendency to put in a big lounge, everything else, but what we've seen is people don't tend to kind of all sit around and watch a movie like you imagine you would do with the students all going a bit of a Netflix binge on a Saturday night. They don't tend to use it like that. But what they do require as a necessity is lots of options for how they can have their breakfast, their lunch and their dinner, with the ability that there is some soft seating, clearly not enough for all of them, if they wanted to maybe have breakfast, lunch and dinner and watch some TV. They've all got TVs in their rooms, probably bigger than the ones that you've got in the lounge. So they kind of, what you're actually, and this is why we kind of had many years, it was almost 4.5 years ago, we had this concept called the cafe. The cafe. It was called the cafe concept, cafe kitchen. And the cafe kitchen was about saying, well, what if it was your best cafe, your favourite cafe you ever went into, and that was the space that was effectively the social, and it was your kind of kitchen space. The kitchen was almost a kind of commercial grade kitchen where the space has been designed for multiple people to cook at the same time. We're assuming multiple people want to cook at the same time, so we try and avoid that by having the right kind of layout and the right appliances in there. And then the social space is designed specifically, primarily for, you know, the bench seating and the various other options of seating, and the lounge element of it is almost secondary to the main purpose, which is eating together and socialising together, with watching TV as being one of the last things down the list.
Do you offer any services around supply food for people, or is it more that you create the infrastructure for people to cook
We've got an
themselves?
event, so we do things like barbecues, and we during the summer, but we also have these kind of competitions that we run on, like Valentine's Day, Halloween, and then what will happen is they have to enter the competition, the community together needs to do something, and then the last one we did was a pumpkin one. They all the different houses carved a pumpkin, and the winner won, I think it was about £100, £200 worth of Just Eat vouchers, and then they all had a takeaway. Together, which is, you know, so, you know, and again, that takeaway brings them back together again. So all these little initiatives kind of is about little opportunities to bring people back together and reconnect.
And when you talk about community, so each house has a community, but then do you do like a wider community? Do you try and do like...
No, because one of the things, so at the Co-Living Super Conference, one of the big topics was around community, and what you can't do is a top-down, you need to be a bottom-up. And so, where people have really tried top-down kind of events to get all these various communities getting together, it's very hard to get them to do it. It's effectively a top-down approach. We take a bottom-up approach, which is we've got all these sub-communities. Let's create lots of different events for them individually, and then work on a kind of community membership model where they can all very easily move between one big interconnected community and facilitate that. So the community manager, the events, and the membership style model for the interconnected bit, that kind of provides it as a bottom-up approach. And that works a lot better. If you, for example, were a build to rent and you had 50 to 100 units in a building, fine, that would make sense. But if you have got lots of stuff that's 6s, 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s, and they're all spread across the city or multiple cities, it makes it the bottom approach.
And where do you see your competition then? Is it from the build to rent people that will potentially be able to do that easier in terms of?
I guess so. I mean, you know, the student market is tough. I know other investors that are in your market in Liverpool are struggling a little bit. Some of my friends who've got portfolios of student stuff in Brighton are starting to feel the heat from the purpose-built blocks going up. I guess you could feel the heat from that from the professional market. The only difference is that everything that I've bought has been on the fundamentals of flipping property, location. So it's the most important location.
The just come in. You're right.
This was actually just recording.
It's okay. What time is it?
12. I've got 10 minutes, I think. It's 12:30, isn't it?
It's 12:30.
What's the first point?
No,
Just getting to a really good bit.
So what you kind of mentioned there as well for the students, I would argue, is direct competition purpose built. So it's students 6 in a house to going to students 6 in a house in purpose built. You either studios in purpose built or they have the cluster flats. To me, most of the build to rent, certainly up north, it is more. It's 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, and it's actually getting the designs, so stuff like in a hotel, you don't have the corridors that you get everywhere else. So it's actually more about managing space more effectively. But still, it's more like what I had in Dubai. You know, it's co-living in terms of all your services and supplies are there, and it's up to you whether you use it or not. So you definitely get a community. But I don't think the purpose-built stuff, for example, in Manchester, will impact the professional HMOs because it's a dearer price point. It'll challenge all the other 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom apartments. But it sounds to me that your market is the room market. So.
And also, you know, I only buy in the best locations.
Yeah.
It means that I have to pay more for them. I never deviate on locations. I've never compromised on that. So they're only in great locations. My refurbs are quite extensive, and I use every type of permitted development and add value development technique that I can to add value to the building.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to max out all of those and do I find a good location.
So you're looking at really maximising the assets, you said, by location, by PD, but then also by design and product.
Everything. So yeah, a combination of every single nuance you can do to turn the total project cost and the GDV and get that distance as wide as possible.
And how long do people typically stay with you for? Do you know, what's the average tendency?
Probably about 1 to 2 years, something like that. They do move on.
Yeah.
2 years. Yeah. I mean, they do. A lot of people. We have because I guess the 25 to 35, they're changing jobs.
Change job.
And we have a lot of people move to London,
move country,
move country. All the classic
partner.
They have a partner. Yeah. But the thing, the reality is we do have people that have moved back.
Yeah.
So if you create a great customer experience, there is only one person they're going to call when they want to live back in the shed.
And what some kind of, you talk a little bit about your staffing, so in terms of, for example, a lot of people I know that we manage internally, they may have a facilities manager, they may have a sales agent, etc. Admin, how do you guys?
I mean, I've kept everything very lean. I think at the back of coming out of my companies, I was very adamant that I was anti-growth.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to build a big team. I didn't want to have a whole kind of overhead of the offices. I wanted to. I'm very proud. It's a lifestyle business. Yeah. It's not being built to sell.
Okay.
It's pure lifestyle.
Yeah.
And that's so it's more about the balance that I get with my family and family time.
Okay.
So I employ through the hotels. We have operations through the hotels. Plus I employ operations and property management through the co-living side. Plus I have other freelancers I use, like project managers. I have other people that get involved in, for example, if I do a design phase on what I'm doing, although I still do all of the creative direction of the work, I do sometimes get people involved in the kind of ideation phase where we're brainstorming ideas. Yeah. I mean, I keep a lot of that quite behind closed doors. Yeah. Because I if I'm going to push stuff out to the market, I like the fact there's a mystery to it. And I treat it as a kind of like an R&D team that's doing some really. We're going to play around with stuff where because the thing is, if it starts, that's why Apple was so experimental, top down. The CEO himself was a creative design person, which meant that it permeated downwards. So my view is that we will try things which maybe other people might not try, and we might fall flat on our face, it might not work, but does it matter?
Yeah. But as you say, you also get the campaign for it as well. Just out of interest as well, in terms of kind of technology, process, ease of life, and I've kind of a bit mixed feelings on this as well. But if someone's got a maintenance issue, have you kind of tried? Is there technology for them to contact, or can they actually speak to a human being?
We integrate the Arthur system. Okay. So we use all of that, but we also have the housekeepers as well, so the housekeeper can pick up the phone and stuff. So we've embraced a lot of technology as part of doing that. It was always going to be a tech first approach to it. At the moment, we use a mixture of Wonderlist, Asana, and Arthur combined together, and then we have the entire business is run off Google Suite. And then we've got integrations between all of them, so that kind of works quite well. In fact, my previous businesses will run off the Google Suite, and keeps me away from Microsoft, which I'm happy.
No, I think everyone uses it now. It's great, and it's very cost effective. And
you've got to embrace technology. If technology can make your life easier, it's worth doing. And if it can have a positive effect on the customer experience and minimise any risk points, then again, that's a really good thing.
And so listen, I mean, one of the other changes or new markets when I know you went a couple of years ago was the hotel area. So what made you kind of go from this kind of HMO to kind of even more what I call kind of a customer-based property?
At the time, it was born out of the fact that service accommodation was a new emerging market. I wanted wanted to diversify a little bit.
Okay.
I wanted more assets in central Brighton.
Yeah.
We did a bit of research. We thought actually what we could do is take this world of SA and maybe create an automated hotel.
Okay.
Hotels are gradually changing, the front desks are gradually moving away.
Yep.
So we kind of almost supercharged that and moved to somewhere that's somewhere between SA and a hotel. So we call it a smart boutique hotel. And we don't have any staff on site, it's fully automated.
How many rooms has it got?
We've got two sites, one's got 12 units, one's got 11, but then some of those rooms are micros, some of them doubles, some of them are deluxes, and we have multiple suites. The suites can sleep for 4 to 6 people.
Okay.
So you're getting a very different rate for that, from a double. Like most hotels, even the one we're in now, will do the same kind of thing. So yeah, it was a learning curve.
And those buildings were bed and breakfast before, weren't
yeah, they were just basically standard bed and breakfast. And we took the same learnings from the kind of development market. We started with 7 rooms, we converted to 12. The classic. 7 or 8 revenue generating rooms. I think the current owners were only using 7. We turned it into 12 revenue generating rooms. Then you've got your EBITDA and it multiplies off that with your valuation.
But also to be probably quite a good niche in terms of it's too small for a big hotel to be interested, but too big for a hobbyist kind of coming in. And I think a lot of the old school people who wanted to run bed and breakfast just aren't there now. It's just a different.
No, we spotted that there would be retiring bed and breakfast people who just didn't want to. Because the classic B&B owner was they live in the basement, they're doing all the work, they're changing over all the beds, they can never go on holiday because they're burnt out. Yeah. So, which is exactly who our seller was. So we just thought actually, there's a different way to do this. Little did we know what kind of learning curve we were going to get on that. Because, a lot of people in the events come up and say, I want to do a hotel. But then they might use the word passive, and I'm like,
yeah, so you talked about we talked about lifestyle business. I mean, can a hotel still be lifestyle business, do you think?
Well, we've now got it to a point that it's highly systemised, and we've got the right kind of staff, but we had no business model to follow. It wasn't like we could follow anything. There were a few examples of System and some of the other ones, but we didn't really have a lot we could follow for it. So we had to kind of work it out along the way, and it took us about a year to really systemise it. Yeah. So it's not a quick win. In the same way residential would be. So it's a longer strategy, if that makes sense.
But do you think you can still keep it as lifestyle?
At the moment, it doesn't take a lot of our time, so we've managed to systemise it, and we've got a great team in place. But we had to. I don't want to underplay the journey it took us to get there, because it was very tough. And then there was a point where me and Carly just had to jump. We had a management company that was managing it. They didn't manage it very well. Also, a service accommodation management agency is not using dynamic pricing, they're not cross-selling, they're not upselling, they're not doing customer calls. They're not improving the customer experience. Then they cannot optimise your occupancy in a way that you can with operations. They're not even operating on the same level. So we realised very quickly that we needed to bring in technology. So that we literally dynamically change our pricing every hour. So it's moving constantly. And it is more likely to go up or down. It can go in any direction. And that dynamic ability is what you need in a fast-paced market.
And again, as you say, in hotels, you're staying one night, maybe staying a week, maybe 2 weeks, compared to renting a room. Your tenancy 6 months, and you'll stay on. So
well, we didn't. I said me and my business partner, Carly Houston. We didn't think we would be doing the operations. Do you remember when we went into this? It was very passive. We were simply the freeholders, and the managing company would do it. And then very quickly we realised that was not the case. Spent the next 3 quarters of a year sorting it out, and then we suddenly became. We had staff and operations, and that was not planned.
Yeah, it's funny. So I won't mention the name of this because it went to legal dispute. But I helped open a hotel in Dubai with a large developer, a very successful individual. And they went to one of the largest operators in the world to operate it, and because at that level you're talking about a percentage share of the profits goes to the landlord, and he was just he's a very experienced businessman, and very successful companies, in hundreds of millions. It was very apparent that even though he'd always been kind of a developer and actually been in tech beforehand, he had more business savvy than because they're ultimately putting in a manager and some of their systems and processes. But anyway, they had a big dispute, and I think it's still going through legal stuff. But again, he absolutely did that, and I mean that was talking it's got about 200 apartments on it, and it's got about 600 rooms. There's significant cash in it, lots of restaurants. But it was quite interesting seeing that. But it was also quite interesting seeing, and again, in Instabuy and sometimes Mira. But you're talking about their kind of food and entertainment. I think is like, you take total revenue at 100%. Your food and your entertainment is actually like 70% of it, and your rooms are only 30%, and your rooms are bloody expensive.
Well, that's the thing. We didn't even contemplate going near that market. We said the niche we are interested in is room only.
Yeah,
it's a room only model. If you want to have that experience of a full English breakfast, which many of us enjoy, go to a hotel.
Yeah.
This is almost like it's somewhere between a service department and a hotel, but it's a room only model.
Yeah.
And we found that there is a demand for this niche product. But it's I wouldn't even want to go near that food and beverage territory, because
it's massive.
It's a massive, and it's a different model. It's a completely different model.
Totally. I mean, even from the cutlery that gets ordered, and actually the cost of what that is in health, and it has to be done to what your themes are, your different chefs, and that. But it's really interesting as well.
But ultimately, it was about diversification. We moved into that market to kind of like diversify. But it is a completely different market. I speak at a lot of events. A lot of people are very interested in SA and hotels, and I think they probably haven't thought through the financing of the hotel. It's not very quick to do, because you have to actually hit your numbers, prove you hit the numbers, and then your valuation is based on performance. Not like we have it easy in the resi world.
You can fill them as well. So you can from a bank. The point is, you fill the each. Well, see, maybe you fill it. You should have got half, 80% of my rooms filled. Okay, that's the rent. You sure you've got 1 month's trading in a hotel? Well, fine. You did it in July. I want to see January.
Really, with a hotel, they're wanting to see minimum of a year, at least a year. If you're in the likes of some of the other, RBS would do 1 year. In fact, we're giving them about 1.5 to 2 years because we wanted to have more data. But some banks will want at least 2 years.
And would you do another hotel?
Well, we've got a second one in development at the moment, and that's another 11 units. Although one of them will sleep 6 to 7 people, so it's quite a big one. And that's further along the seafront. So they will operate the same operations team.
Okay, good.
Same operations team. Just we've got some extra units. Very similar product, and so effectively it's one big operation. But I think once we've got that one running, I think that we're not going to be running out getting buying hotel number 3, 4, 5, because I think there's a lot of overhead in the logistics of it.
And would you do anything outside of Brighton, or is Brighton's home?
Location.
Right. And so you mentioned kind of Carly there. So obviously you've got a joint venture partner. What sort of insights could you give to people in kind of getting a good joint venture partner? What to look for, how to do it, and also what to avoid?
Well, I guess I don't really do joint ventures at all. I think a lot of the training pushes them, but you get people on social media asking for a joint venture partner they've never met. It's crazy. It's a business partnership, so I don't treat them as JV. I treat them as a business partnership. So what me and Carly did is we found a niche, and we created a business for that niche. Rather than, I didn't really think of it as a JV. I thought of it in a traditional sense. When I set up my first company, that was a business partnership.
And it should be. You're only doing it with Carly on the hotels. So it's
on the hotels,
yes. It's not. And Carly's got her other business interests as well. So
business, she goes with the charity sector. I've got my business on the co-living side, and then we've come together on that area there. That's because ultimately we work together. We become friends and we trust each other, and so that is the basis.
And how long did you know each other before you did the first hotel?
Maybe 2 years.
At least 2 years.
Yes, 2 years.
Yeah.
At least 2 years.
Yeah. So one of the things, I totally agree with you. I think one of the dangers, and I've had too many joint venture partners. And again, it's easy to buy something. It's difficult to operate. It's difficult for people all to agree. And I think to me, what's also it's difficult when something goes wrong. Is that's when you see the real person. And again, there's not a right or a wrong. If some people want to get completely flustered, you know, we'll say perfect. But the reality is, I don't, because maybe that's because too many things go wrong. But to some extent, you know, I'm kind of used to putting out fires, and it's not, you know, nothing big's gone wrong. But I've had situations when the bank who, you know, gave the best valuations, they pulled out of the market. You know, in the best will of the world, I don't think I could have, you know, pre-planned that. You know, and it doesn't matter that you say that to someone up front. You say that's what the situation is. In terms of the, you know, because it's interesting. I've got a different view from kind of Carly when she talks to investors. My view is I always give them the best case scenario, but I tell them it's the best case scenario because I think in a joint venture that you should be, or the investor be telling them the truth, and then but trying to get them to realise what could happen. And it's probably more fool me because they just remember the best, but they don't remember you saying, but by the way, I'm giving you the best case because that's what you should do, but I would always take 10% off the realistic thing, whereas Carly looks to kind of know what she wants, but then over-deliver to them, you know?
Exactly, So, and that's actually, that's very good, because I think what we've done is we have a range, so it could be this GDP. In fact, we're expecting this GDP. But in the current market, it would be prudent to knock 25,000, 40, 50,000, and then you can overperform, which is much better. And all of the rents that we're modelling one at the moment where the rents are way under what I'm getting. In fact, I know it's improvable, but it's pessimistic. So what we've done out the back of the working together on the hotels, we've now done, because we worked well as a team, we're creating a new business which is launching probably next month, which is a turnkey portfolio building business. So this is where, you know, Carly's going to be working with a lot of investors. I'll kind of tap into that as well, and then, you know, I'll be, you know, creating the products, the high-end product, that kind of niche product. So it'll be for, you know, high net worths that want a portfolio in the southeast with a mixture of capital appreciation and amazing product, and they want something highly exclusive with a bit of strategic work in it as well.
And that'll be on the HMO basis rather than the hotel basis.
Yes, on the HMO basis,
Okay, sounds interesting. And when did you say you think you're going to be launching that?
Well, we
not to put you under any time pressure.
we already have people that are interested in it. We've got some deals that we're looking at the moment, so that's already kind of happening. The only thing that slowed us down is we're deciding on a name. So we're literally in a classic kind of creators scenario where we've shortlisted 5 or 6 names. I'm not going to say them, but and we're just working through the process. You know, going back to my kind of like branding days many years ago, where my first jobs was in the branding agencies. Actually creating a brand's easy. Naming a company is really hard. That's why, you know, we didn't touch a branding project for under 5 to 10 grand. Because you can spend weeks on coming up with something unique as a name.
Yeah, well, I remember from the corporate days as well. There's a lot of clangers for brands that people came up with. But that's another thing too. One of the things as well, you know, said I've always been impressed in terms of your design and your products and that. But you've been quite lucky. You've been quite a few awards for your work in the last couple of years. You've been kind of recognised across the industry. That's
I think we picked up Property Investor of the Year, which I think you were a finalist for the year
after. Was a finalist, I never won it, not bitter, but I was a finalist.
So it's Property Investor of the Year.
It's more difficult my year.
HMO Deal of the Year, and then the year after, which was the one where you were a finalist, was I picked up the Developer of the Year, which I was up against a build-to-rent player building skyscrapers. But then, you know, my niche was, look, we're not the biggest. But, you know, we're a purpose-driven, value-driven company, and we're about innovation. This is not about scale. It's about innovation. We're really disruptive and innovative in what we do.
And I think that's what I particularly like about what you've done. To me, you have created, you know, probably a bit like me, you're between the lifestyle business and the full-on business. You know, you've also done your full-on business with your 20 staff, and you've kind of sold. Now, essentially, if you're doing stuff that you like, but you also manage your risk. You're probably similar age to me in terms of you've got a good income from it.
I think children will do that.
I think you also. I mean, I was speaking to a 27-year-old last night, and he's a YouTuber guy. You're very successful, over whatever, like 2 million subscribers, significant chunk of cash in the bank. You know, he's going on about earning £1 billion. And I was like, why do you want to earn £1 billion? What difference? Because you saw him with someone with a portfolio of 10 million, so small doesn't mean anything. You know, he's earning, I think, about 20, 30 grand net from his YouTube at home, so he's doing well. But I mean, I had a conversation that said, like, So just what do you think the difference is going to be between earning 500,000 a year and actually earning a billion? Sorry, 5 million a year, or a billion? What do you think you could do differently? You know, the only thing he could actually come up with is that he could have his own private jet. And I'm like, so fine. So how often are you going to fly? Once every 2 months or something? Once a month? So you're going to save an hour in an airport, and you know, but yeah, it's different again. He's been, I wouldn't say lucky, because you know, he's done his business, but he's managed to get something that's been very lean, has created a lot of money, and so he just kind of said, well, I can do this at this age, and therefore I need to be able to get to that level, and only until you go through age will some people get some of that experience.
Well, I had I had coffee with my non-exec chairman from my first business, and he used to mentor us a lot, kind of, you know, during that period of growth. And interestingly, he runs workshops, and he always says to entrepreneurs who are either about to start a business or thinking about, so he asks them one of two questions. If I dropped £1 million into your bank account tomorrow, option number one. Option number two, something's happened, you've only got a year left to live. What do you do? How do you spend your time? Some people struggle with it because it's only business focused. But interestingly, you know, it changes the perspective. What do you enjoy doing, and how do you want to spend your time? Because if you've run out of time, or you've got all the money you need, and now you're not chasing money anymore, what do you do? Reality is, you should only do stuff you enjoy.
Joy, absolutely.
Ultimately.
No, I agree 100%. And again, I think there's been lots of studies as well, and I think it's actually to be a relatively low figure. I think it's like $80,000 that the incremental gain from stuff that then decreases. And it's funny, that guy Stephen Bartlett I told you about before, he was on in his podcast. He mentioned he was on a flight to New York. There was a couple that came on the flight, and you could just see they were so excited about kind of being there. So they listened to the conversations the first time they'd been to New York, they'd done something that got them upgraded, and then he actually made a decision, and then he was just kind of sitting there thinking, I'm just fucking bored of sitting in first class now. And he was like, when I first went first class or business, whatever, it was it was an experience, and now I just take it for granted. So it's kind of like that guy, he gets the jet, it'll just be, doesn't matter what car you get, it becomes the norm. So what he actually does now, and again, this is his podcast, so it must be true, but he goes to the airport, books economy through the work when he's flying, and then he uses his miles that he can upgrade. But the point is, he knows it's only 50-50 whether he'll get it, so it actually becomes a good experience for him again. If he actually gets it, rather than, you know, his point was, we just take stuff for granted, whereas the stuff that we actually used to enjoy, we just forget. And I think
well, actually, you know, a lot of I guess my wife and I, you know, we're reasonably frugal. We don't spend lots of money. My wife
loves it.
Well, you know, my wife loves gardening. You know, if you know, my wife had a perfect house, it's, you know, it's just a bigger garden with a huge, you know, good life kind of veg patch in it. So, you know, we don't spend, you know, huge amounts of money. You know, and actually, I think going through you know, a period of, you know, just understanding, you know, what you're spending and you know, how you spend your money and what gives you enjoyment, I think kind of puts things a bit more into perspective. So actually, a lot of the time you're only chasing covering your earnings. It's like, well, actually, maybe your earnings, your outgoings. You know, maybe they, you know, do, you know, they're justified.
Absolutely. And then, and for most people, property as well, you just put the money back into the next deal anyway.
Yeah, I think for a long time, in this last 5 years I've been, it's all been rapid growth. So, you know, a lot of it's been about building a portfolio in the southeast. This year is the first year where it's not really about growth anymore. It's about diversification. It's about more revenue streams coming in. I want to reduce the loan to value across it. I want to reduce the kind of like the debt level against the portfolio. I want to de-risk a little bit. I want to work with other people, see if I can help them as well. So, you know, this year is about, you know, we want to change our main family house. I don't want to take more dirt down on it. I want it to move into the next large kind of self-built project that we do. But I don't want it to be debt. I want it to be earning money. So, you know, I kind of see this year as being a very, very different kind of year. It's no longer about the traditional race that we have to just get more and more units.
And you can't, I mean, any business, you know, whether it's property, whether it's FMCG, you can go through periods of growth, and then you've got to sustain it. You know, you kind of go up, you go down.
This year is about definitely slowing down. I mean, that's why, you know, I had a book workshop the other day. I'll have the co-living book coming out. Probably by the time it's published, it'll be about the summer.
Yeah.
And then I'll tie that into that. I'll tie stuff into that.
And again, so once you've got that growth, and I just had a session with a gentleman last week, and just by looking through his kind of portfolio, it's kind of like we get well, some 40% tax savings, and then some pension contributions to 20%. Then they'll go in through the employee stuff, through the employer stuff. But then also a couple of properties that he'd had for a number of years that kind of fallen below rents in terms of kind of increasing them. A couple of advertising stuff that he can kind of put on pubs that he's got.
Yeah.
Also then looking at some extra revenue simply from late checkouts is kind of like, and also then looking at refinancing stuff, old shop route mortgages, and actually doing more with less. And it's kind of like you can run out and go and buy 5 new properties, or you can just kind of go through this stuff bit by bit.
Yeah, I mean, have you maxed out the assets that you've got at the moment? Have you utilised every little angle? And for example, I've got a number of mixed-use ones, which are a mixture of co-living, apartments, and retail. Now, I didn't utilise capital allowances when I bought them.
Yeah.
Of course, now I'm running capital allowances through all of them, and you talk about there's very significant tax savings through your portfolio. How often do landlords go back and go through all of their energy efficiency through their portfolio? You kind of you might have a leaky bucket.
Absolutely.
So now I think it's my perspective has changed somewhat now.
But it's sensible, and a lot of us don't like it. A lot of us like to go and do the next deal, but actually, either you've got to get someone that will do that for you, because if you then go to scale, and I let things fall over, and then I correct it. But I spent the last 12 months doing all of that in terms of energy. So we've got one renewal deal now with Scottish Power. It's 40 contracts that go in together. We've got a 3-year deal, and trust me, it was a pain to do because utility companies are a pain, but just in terms of savings, it's significant. And also then controlling the heat, putting in whether it's time stamp, whether it's high, making sure again that building is just efficient, as you say. You don't.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of every time I delve in, I discover something I didn't know about, or a fee that was too high or something. But building the turnkey element of the business is very much about systemising the acquisition element.
Yeah.
So although we're effectively working with clients and we're helping them, we're building an engine, so we're systemising something that's more ad hoc for a lot of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that kind of works. That works really well. It works for diversification. It works on
it gives a profit.
And it's a profit play mixed in with a cash flow play. The thing is, a lot of my assets are in the southeast, so I can get more from less. Many of my projects will kick out between 20 to 24,000 net profit a year. So you don't need as many of them.
Yeah.
And also they're in the southeast, so capital appreciation, even at a very pessimistic 3.5%, is doing very nicely. So I went for location first.
Well, even in the north, and I haven't actually done the analysis of this, but I'm pretty sure that I've still gained more from capital appreciation than I actually have from income. So I'm a firm believer that the long-term gain is actually capital appreciation, and that's in the northwest. That has done very well in the last 5-6 years, but has never grown at the same extent that the southeast does. But I think without a doubt, if you can hold something in the southeast for 10, 15 years.
15 years. I mean, that's the key thing. What would have been 10 years maybe some time ago? Yeah, I agree with you. I think if you think of the 10-year rule being 15, then you're close to it being able to double.
Absolutely.
And in the south, where you can something that was valued at 600, suddenly that's gone to over $1 million. So
and even if it doubles, the reality is most people say that by normal value, you put 25% purchase price deposit down. So it's actually for a normal investment, that's all your capital. 75% in it. Doubling is really insane. When it doubles, you're getting 5 times your deposit basically.
I have a mix of most of the stuff I do is over 30% ROI, and over half the projects I do are probably no money left in deals. So I'm reasonably risk averse. I mean, people look at what I do and think that obviously it's just rapid growth and everything else, but actually it's underpinned by some very shrewd numbers, which is I only do it. Although I walk in there and if I have to like the property, I have to think that if I go in there and think if I can do something amazing with it, I'll buy it. If I can't, I probably won't buy it. But I'm only going to walk in the door if the numbers stack. So it's almost like the classic mechanic element is numbers need to stack. And then for numbers stack, you can go to the emotion part. For me, I need the numbers backed up by the facts.
So you are really looking at each deal holistically.
I have to, yeah. And I mean, I've got to be, like I say, when you slow down a little bit, it's like, well, actually, do I want to buy this? Is it a great location? Can I do something amazing with it? If it starts to tick all those boxes, it feels good, yeah, I think I'll go with it. So you move from more of a mechanical to a more emotion-based purchase, which is underpinned by fundamentals.
But that's the right way to do it. Whereas the danger is you do emotion and then try and get the numbers.
Oh yeah, no. I don't even open the door unless I already know it's over 25%. I'm not even walking in the door.
Yeah. And Stuart, how can people get in contact with you? What's the best way for them to contact you?
Easiest way to get in contact is just go to our website, co-livingspaces.co.uk.
Great.
If you type that in, we're number one. I think we should be right at the top in Google. It's the easiest way, and then on Facebook again, co-living spaces.
Great. Listen, thanks for the time today. Loved the insights you provided, and looking forward to the new hotel and the next part of your journey.
Thank you, Billy.
You're welcome.